Alicia Schiller stabbed her friend to death over $50. Now she wants to bring a child into this world through IVF and raise it behind bars. And she's allowed to. If you're shocked, imagine how the victim's family feels.
Police officers working on her on the floor.
Tyrell Evertson Mostert was left to die.
There's a grey ring around her and I knew she was gone.
Alicia Schiller stabbed the mother of three to death. Despite causing a lifetime of pain for Joe and Tyrell's sister, Miranda Evertson Mostert, she is now being afforded privileges not offered to everyone. She's going to try and have a baby while in prison.
She's going for IVF, which is a joke, an absolute disgusting joke.
The convicted murderer is serving time here at Dame Phyllis Frost Centre in Melbourne's West, where she's reportedly been granted permission to leave for IVF appointments. Alicia is funding her own treatment, but what's not clear is, if successful, who foots the bill to bring up her child behind bars.
It is ludicrous that this could happen. She is a criminal, she should serve her time, and once again, the government needs to have a shake-up, a damn good bloody look at themselves.
It is a privilege and there's a lot of people out there that can't afford it. She's just not fit to be a mother.
It's understood Alicia would raise her son or daughter in a unit designated for inmates with children until aged 5, before transitioning to a life without their mother on the outside.
What about that child? If it's born in jail, what life has she got?
There's also concerns, I think, about what that means for the attachment between the child and their parent when they are separated at 5.
Fertility lawyer Sarah Jefford.
I do think the taxpayer has a right to raise questions and concerns about what money is being used to spend on people in prison, including children being born into that system.
It's one thing to go in pregnant and have the baby stay with you, but to go 8 years, I think we're coming up on now, and it's allowed because she's got some money of her own.
Do you think it makes it any more acceptable because Alicia is paying for the treatment herself?
Not at all. She's in there to do time. She's being punished. So we're living with a lifetime of punishment, not having my sister. The boys don't have a mother. She threw that away. That's not her call or the department or anyone else's call to make. She should not have that opportunity.
She may be paying for IVF, but what about the 5 years in jail? Nappies, everything that she needs, let alone being in a segregated unit. Who will foot that bill? And if the baby gets sick, there's the doctor, etc, etc, etc.
A jury found Alicia guilty of murdering Tyrell, who had been letting Alicia and her boyfriend stay in her Geelong home. One day in November 2014, Tyrell stole $50 from Schiller's room, and upon realising money was missing, Schiller stabbed Tyrell multiple times in a rage.
She stabbed her right through the arm and through the back, and then she turned the knife and stabbed her in the heart. And that was a fatal blow.
The killer fled the home, dumping the murder weapon a few streets away. Alicia was sentenced to 20 years jail. She'll be eligible for parole after 16, but her crime will haunt Tyrell's family forever.
It's a hole in all our hearts, not just... And it gets bigger. Tyrell came in a cradle when we moved in here. That's how tiny she was then. So, yeah, they grew up here. Yeah, okay. This is home.
She was my everything. Being my only sister, she was a very strong person, very strong-minded.
What happened here that day wasn't the first crime Alicia had committed. In fact, far from it. This document from the Supreme Court of Victoria reveals she had a 16-page-long criminal history when a judge sentenced her. And that seems to have had no bearing on her ability to try and have a baby from behind bars.
She was convicted of violent crimes, including assault, intentionally causing injury, recklessly causing injury and serious injury. When she killed Tyrell, Alicia was on a community correction order for drug and dishonesty offences.
She was an evil, evil person.
Under the Charter of Human Rights in Victoria, everyone has the right to access medical treatment, and that has been found by the Supreme Court to include access to fertility treatment.
The state government has deflected responsibility.
I do point to a 2010 Supreme Court decision that made a ruling that did provide a pathway for prisoners for treatment.
But Sarah says it's likely an independent body within Victoria's Health Department would have ticked this off.
It's possible that it's the Patient Review Panel, which sits within the Department of Health but is also independent, that consider applications like this and then make a decision.
Is a convicted murderer fit to be a mother?
I think on the circumstances. In her case, no. She's given up that right.
Regardless of what the law allows, Joe and Miranda say this to Tyrell's killer.
You've caused enough damage. You've put enough hatred in the world. Think about what you're doing.
Rotten hell.
I reckon a lot of people would agree with her there. So who or what should we be focused on here? The rights of the mother or the rights and welfare of the child? Victoria's Shadow Minister for Police and Justice Reform, Brad Batten, joins me. Appreciate your time, Brad. Why shouldn't she be allowed to undergo IVF and have a baby in prison?
Look, good evening, and first of all I just want to say I came into this angry and now you're watching that video. It's actually, I've gone very sad, but why shouldn't she? She stole the life of a person who was a mother of 3 children and now wants to have that right and privilege for herself. That is just wrong, it's not fair, and it should never be justified.
Well, you introduced a bill today that would ban prisoners from starting IVF. Why didn't it get the numbers to pass?
We introduced that into Parliament, not it just passed. The Victorian Labor government actually opposed us even debating the bill, so they've got the numbers to stop any debate in the Parliament. So they don't even want to talk about this in Parliament because they know for a fact that this is a big issue and it's going to hurt them because they've got the position to stop it and they failed to.
So this is the bit, right? I mean, had this got up, Sheila, who stabbed someone to death over $50, would not be having a baby and raising it in jail.
100%, and that shouldn't be happening. Why should someone who stole the life from a mother of 3 have the right to have a child and then raise it in the prison system that is supposed to be there to effectively punish them? And now we're going to say to them, here's your rights to actually raise a child within there midway through your sentence. It's disgusting.
So the precedent to allow prisoners to access IVF treatment is based on a Supreme Court decision that was 14 years ago. But that woman wasn't charged with murder. The circumstances were very different.
That's correct. There was a person who was charged and who was already under the process of going through IVF, took it through the courts. She was charged with welfare fraud. That's a world different to murder, so it's a whole different set of circumstances. So to say that that's the comparable case, I actually think that's a sign from the government they're too weak to fight this and take it through the process it should go.
Do you think this comes down to weak leadership from a political standpoint? I think it was Tyrell's mother said they need a shake-up and a good hard look at themselves.
100%. They need a shake-up, but they should be coming out there and defending the victims and not those that are currently being sentenced. We actually want to see the passion from in there so they can go in and fight for the person that's right. And I think that would actually see if a minister get involved. If I was the minister right now, I would get involved in this and ensure that the voice of the victim was heard. So
from our understanding, though, the IVF clinic can decline someone like Sheila. If that happens, she can then appeal it to the Patient Review Panel, which is, as we just heard in Lexi's story, an independent body within the Victorian Health Department. So it sounds like there are safeguards there.
There are safeguards in place, but the view from the Liberal and Nationals here in Victoria is it should never have got to this. We should make sure that someone who's in prison for that period of time for these offences don't have access to it in the first place, not going through a process that every person in the community gets access to go through that appeals process.
Brad, I think this is probably what most people sitting at home, and probably including yourself, keep thinking of, like, what kind of life does this poor child have? You think about those first 5 years, they're so formative, and then, you know, on your 5th birthday, you're taken from your mother to live in this strange world where there's buses, there's people, there's shops and school, these, you know, all things that a normal child is exposed to.
I used to work in a prison, Ellie, and during that time, any person sentenced to more than 3 years, they would actually go through an integration program in their last 12 months where they go out for 4 hours, 8 hours, and it works its way up in time to integrate them back into the community. But we're saying a young person who's born in there, who's going to be institutionalised by the time they're 5, is going to be sent out without that mother and going into another setting to go and educate and learn. I just think it's going to be too unsettling. It's unfair on the child, and we talk about human rights. Why don't we talk about the human rights of this child to make sure they've got the best opportunities and the government can afford them that?
And it's, you know, on the other hand of that, it's just so selfish.
Oh, 100%. This is someone who's already a serious violent offender on the serious violent offenders register and is going to be there for life and is doing it for themselves. If they need a partner in there, then why don't we look at like a guide dog or a support dog? But rather than actually saying to them, you can have a child and raise them and then put them back into the community and probably create more issues long term and more pain for the family that's watching this go through, I think it's a disgrace from the government and a weak response.
Yeah, and we just saw the pain from the family there. And look, so I know Sheila is paying for the IVF treatment, but then transport, raising the child behind bars, feeding it, keeping it safe from other inmates, that's on taxpayers. So we pay for this, Brad.
100%, and the Dame Phyllis Frost Centre is already struggling. So they're having rolling lockdowns because they've got short staff. They've got staff in there that are amazing, that are working 16-hour shifts, 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row doing these extended hours. And now the government is saying to them, what we're going to do, you're going to need to take 2 staff to secure this person to give them that transport, probably lock down the prison more. So it's going to be unfair on the other prisoners that are in there. I just think it's an absolute disgrace, and the cost of that for the extra overtime, I'm sure that no one's paying for that other than the Victorian taxpayer, which we'd prefer to see that invested in rehabilitation.
So is this seriously going to happen, or can it be stopped?
I'm going to say I hope it can be stopped. I hope that the message from the media, and I know you tonight, is again emphasising the fact that it needs to stop. The only way it will stop is if the Victorian government come out and stop it before it goes through the process, because even the standard process you mentioned before, Ali, is going to cause more pain and more impact on the family who just want this ended today, and the government have a chance to do it this weekend.
Yeah, it is just hard to wrap your head around the rights of a convicted killer trumping those of an innocent unborn baby. Thank you so much, Brad. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.